So what I take from that is that comparison's the thief of joy, but also to anyone out there listening, comparison's the thief of healing too.
Yes, well said.
It really
Very,
is.
very well said. Very well said. Because if you're trying to compare yourself with someone else, you're limiting your ability to be able to get whole. Man, that's a really interesting thought, brother. I was just with someone the other day, and they're in this cycle of comparing the fact that they've only got 80% disability and they really feel they should have 100% disability. And this person over here didn't do anything like they did, and they've got all the benefits and they don't have. And so there's this, and so the inability to celebrate what you do have. 80%, who can celebrate that? You can't. But in this guy's head, that's what this whole thing was a number amount. And he was comparing and competing with someone else. And he was so myopic, he was forgetting to see his children, his wife, his house, his health, just because of what you said. It robbed that joy and that possibility of seeing a future horizon.
It's a cancer. It really is, and it eats us from the inside. That comparison. I mean, it's part of it's the bad side of our culture. It's good to be competitive, but you can't compare your chapter 1 or your 80% to someone else's 100%. Like, you got to do yours. And to that young man that's out there, that young warrior or that young woman out there, whomever it may be, that is about percentages. There's this thing. We're all willing to die for that document called the United States Constitution, right? And that thing's even got 27 let's make it betters called amendments. And you can always have an amendment. You know what I mean? That's all that it was, right? But we're willing to die for it. And there's 27 let's make it betters, right?
Well said, man. That's fantastic.
So we're always failing forward, right? We're always figuring out what first attempts at learning. That's what it is. What Nelson Mandela said, it's not that I don't ever win or I don't ever lose. I don't ever lose. I either win or I learn, right? So it's that first attempts at learning. So to that young man or any young warrior out there, there's these things called amendments. You can try one, and that way you don't have to be stuck in that where you just said, like, it's eventually what's sad is I see a lot of veterans, you get nihilistic. And
yes.
That's a dark place.
That is I'm a spiritual man. I'm a Christian man. And in my darkest times, my faith has always been my brightest. My faith is a thing that's got me through everything I went through. And, I never signed up for my childhood. My childhood was inflicted on me. It was not something I enrolled for. It was not something I got a college degree out of. I got a life lesson. But it's the sort of thing that should never happen to anybody. And but I'm grateful for it because it's the lessons I learned. You're talking there for a moment. I've got my private pilot's license, and I remember at the start of my recovery, I read 200 books, and I just consumed this because there was nothing for men who'd been sexually abused, particularly by women, and there was no support. There was literally nothing in America. There is still only one house for boys that have been trafficked. And I read all these books, and I got to about year 3. And things just weren't changing for me quick enough. I realized a couple of things. First is IRAT, Information, Revelation, Application, Transformation.
IRAT. I got to write this down. I'm sorry. You can't give me an acronym I'm not going to write down. I might get this into a tattoo.
IRAT, Information, Revelation, Application, Transformation.
Thank you.
I read 200 books. I gathered the information. But I realized that unless it became my information, and at that point, I started to apply that information.
Yes.
Only then did I see transformation. And we can go to our support groups and we can read our books and we can listen to our podcasts. But if people are hearing this today and they find one thing and they make that one thing theirs, and that'll be the thing that'll change them.
Yes.
If they're just sitting on a treadmill listening to stuff, nothing's going to change them. So that happened to me. And then the second thing that happened very close behind was I was with my instructor and we set a course, and he said, we're going to fly out here for an hour, but I want you to set our directional finder 1 degree off. And so by the time we got to where we were supposed to be, we were so far on it. And what I realized was that I had a tendency to overestimate what I could do in a year and underestimate what God could do in 10 years.
Yes.
And I thought to myself, disappointment comes out of unmet expectation.